In an earlier video, I had made mention that we haven't been getting a whole lot of like the retro prog music that I really love, and I guess I'm kind of eating my words now because we've got quite a few that I'm going to be diving into, and I wanted to start off with the one that I cannot stop listening to, and might be, the album of the summer, and might even be one of the best albums of the year. We'll see. Let's dive in. Bumper Book of Mystery Stories by I Am the Manic Whale. So, I Am the Manic Whale is a retro prog band. They consider themselves like a crossover prog on the Prog Archives, but I consider them more of like a retro prog band, kind of in the same outfit that like Arabs in Aspect are, same way that like Third Degree is. I'm even thinking of Southern Empire and Evership. I would even say like Ekelin. That kind of style of retro prog, it's very rockin'. It's got a lot of that really fun aspect of prog. Fox Beard is another example that these guys are very similar to, and there's a little bit of a crossover because a number of the individuals from this band actually helped out with Ryo Okamoto's album Myth of the Monster Fist from last year. So yeah, a lot of the players on this album could be found on that album, and that was one of my favorite retro prog albums of last year. So yeah, we're getting something really, really spicy, really, really good on this one. So these guys are from the UK, getting their start back in 2015 and putting out their first album in that year of Everything Beautiful in Time, following it up 2 years later with Gathering the Waters. And then in 2020, putting out their third album of Things Unseen. Now, this is my first introduction to the band. I guess I can only have one introduction, so this is my first time listening to it as my introduction to the band with Bumper Book of Mystery Stories. So I'm going to go back and listen to the other three albums, because if they are anything like this album, I am in for a treat, because oh boy, this is just, the band consists of David Addis on guitars and vocals, John Murphy on keyboards and vocals, Michael Whitman on bass pedals, guitars, and vocals, and Ben Harley on drums, percussion, and, you guessed it, vocals. So all four of these boys take some lead in the vocal works at one point or another, which I really, really appreciate, because it almost has that like Moon Safari, very dripping harmonizations that we have on here. Maybe not to the same extent as Moon Safari, because they're in a whole league of their own, but definitely in that, there's no center singer, everybody takes their time, and the harmonies that are found on here are really, really good. I love how everybody's really well placed on this album as well, and we do have a few individuals that come in and help out as well. Sally Minier, I believe, is on vocals, Ella Lloyd is on flute, and Simon Whitman is on guitars, and our boy Rio makes an appearance on here for a couple keyboard solos as well. So, kind of scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. Okay, so I've talked around this album, and I'm going to continue to do so, because this album is a very loose concept album. It's kind of based on those old, like, books for boys that I remember reading when I was a kid, just like a collection of weird and strange stories. I am kind of glad that they up to this point have shoved off the whole gender roles aspect, because like stories for boys, like, that's just, stories are stories. They're not gender exclusive. So I'm glad the fact that these guys just went the Bumper Book of Mystery Stories rather than the traditional, manly stories for boys or whatever. And each track in that kind of vein is its own little story and its own little tale. And I really appreciate that they kind of go from, everything from pirates to medical mysteries to nautical, almost like H.G. Wells stories of like 1,000 or 10,000 Leagues Under the Sea, going into like, don't know what that's all about, going right into like alien invasions and things like that. So I really appreciate the breadth of different varieties of stories on here, all within the wacky and weird. This album can be kind of divided into two, the first half and the second half. And I know that most albums do that, but I feel like the first half really sets the groundwork for what we can expect from this band. It kind of introduces us to the type of music. The opening track of Ghost Train is a lot of fun. It's bumping, it's driven, it's got a lot of energy to it. The second track of Patient AB introduces us even more to the concept. This is kind of talking about a medical mystery of an individual that is approached by these doctors that are like, hey, we need to do a brain scan. We found this malignant thing. And now thank you for your time. Goodbye. And you're not quite sure if that's goodbye, you're discharged from the hospital, or goodbye, you're going to die. So I kind of like how they leave the ending open to interpretation, very much like a lot of those short stories would. Ghost Train, I should say, I jumped over it, but it's basically the introduction. It's saying, you don't have a choice. You're coming along for the ride. There's going to be some scary stuff. There's going to be some wacky and weird stuff, but it's going to be a good time. It's going to be fun. Dream Fortune is all about treasure and pirates, and A, hiding the treasure, and then B, trying to find it later on. And then The Secret Passage is very similar to a lot of those, like finding a hidden door within this old house that leads to an incredible world. Very similar to like an Alice in Wonderland or a Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe for Narnia, or even going so far as to say like Wizard of Oz, or any kind of those types of stories. And all four of these tracks are a lot of fun, and it wetted my whistle in terms of that fun retro prog that I really like, and that was a very fun aspect. It wasn't until we get to the final four tracks, the second half of this album, that my ears perked up, that I realized that we were dealing with something very, very special, starting with The Incredible David. This track has some extremely beautiful moments on it, just within the retro prog sphere. It's got that symphony sounds that I love, the really big and jovial aspects to it. I love the overall story of like this little kid that discovers that he's very special in that case, and it's kind of centered around like the parents' point of view in that. Really enjoy that. But it's Nautilus. It's Nautilus, the sixth track, the 13-minute, the first big epic that basically retells the tale of 10,000 Leagues Under the Sea. That is where we have something extremely special, and I love the play style of this. It's huge, it's vast. This is reminding me of like the best parts of this style of music, like the Skyline from the PROG project, the Southern Empire, their Civilization record that they put out a number of years ago. This style is something that we only get once every couple of years, where it's just so infectious. It gets right into you and it won't leave. The follow-up of Enode's Magic Cube, at first I thought was a little bit out of place because it tells the tale of the invention of the Rubik's Cube, Enode Rubik being the inventor of the Rubik's Cube. At first I'm like, well, this isn't a story. And then I realized this is an advertisement. If you're looking through these books or these comics, you would always run into these kind of advertisements. And this has, those old advertisements would always have like a little blurb of like either the invention or the person behind it, or, how it came to form. So I'm like, oh, this is kind of like the end of the book advertisement of it. And I love that kind of aspect, that this was kind of, leafleted into the end. And then we interrupt this broadcast. The final track on here is a 1-2 punch where it's, if you're watching this as a TV show or you're reading this as a book, this is where the aliens come down in real life. And, it's like, do we salvage this planet from these apes that are doing their damnedest to destroy it? Or do we try to let them recoup whatever damages they've done? And every time we do, it just gets worse and worse. And then at the end of this track, it kind of goes right back to Ghost Train Part 2. And I'm kind of surprised that they didn't have a Ghost Train Part 2 as part of this track, but that's just kind of how it is. In the end, I will say A Bumper Book of Mystery Stories really, really surprised me. I heard it from a couple of my friends, and I gave it a couple spins on Bandcamp, and I immediately ran out and bought it. This album is one that I keep listening to, and the more I return to it, the more I enjoy it. I've been really going deep into this album, and I have yet to even run into the diminishing returns. As I mentioned, this is an album that really only comes out once every handful of years. The only ones that I can think of that are to this level of brilliance within the retro prog are like the Southern Empire Civilization or the Baroque Project Skyline. This is kind of like the cream of the crop of this style of music. You're really going to be hard pressed to find anything better. Yeah, it's for that reason that I'll say Bumper Book of Mysteries by I Am the Manic Whale is one that I absolutely love with my whole heart. The only reason that I'm not giving this the full-on masterpiece status is I still feel like those first 4 tracks are just a little bit weaker than the final 4 tracks. If those first 4 tracks were as good as the last 4 tracks, we would absolutely have a masterpiece on our hand. But that being said, I'll say like the first 4 tracks are like an 8 out of 10. Those last 4 tracks are definitely a 10 out of 10. So this is like caressing a masterpiece. This is as close to a masterpiece we can get without being a full-on masterpiece. I think I Am the Manic Whale has outdone themselves. I think they need to be applauded, and definitely be on the lookout at my year-end list for this album, because this is my favorite record so far of the summer, and it's really hard pressed to find an album that I like more that has been released this year. So this is a Run Don't Walk. This gets the note seal of approval. I freaking love this album, and you guys, I think, will love it too. So that's what I've got for the Bumper Book of Mysteries stories from I Am the Manic Whale. What did you guys think about this record? Did you love it? Did you hate it? How does it compare to their past discography? Again, I haven't heard their first 3 records, but I am definitely diving in and having a listen to those ones once I get through all the backlog albums I still have to review. So that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.